I
how you
really
feel.
do. So it's great to meet you. I'd like to begin our conversation with, we look at the calendar, it's April, 4 years ago, everything stopped on a dime. How did you survive the pandemic and how did it subsequently change you?
Yeah, I while the world was shutting down for everybody else, that was when my life was transforming. So, my husband and I, we were engaged at the time. We closed on our house May 10th, 2020. We were planning to get married in May of 2020. We ended up getting married in July of that year. But I had been preparing for about 2 to 3 years to leave corporate. And I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do and when I was going to do it. But the pandemic changed everything, and made it possible really for me to leave and to do the fractional consulting work that I've always wanted to do because it became possible to work remote. I was on my husband's health insurance and it opened up a lot of doors for me. And so while everybody else was hunkered down, baking bread, you know, doom scrolling, I was unpacking a whole house worth of
Uh-huh.
stuff. It was amazing.
I actually moved into our house. I got married in May or in July of 2019. We moved in January of 2020, and it was a pretty bustling kind of city. It's outside of Kansas City, and it was so weird when everything shut down. But there was a relief that all of that went down before, So and yeah, unpacking and having this thing to look forward to will definitely get rid of all the doom that we were living through and the bad headlines for sure, you know. So in your line of work, it's very evident on paper what you do, but if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids was curious and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I help small businesses make more money.
Okay. What did you want to be in the third grade?
I wanted to be a scientist.
Oh. Did you ever do any scientific things?
I have an engineering background, so I was an industrial engineer by training. I worked as a operations consultant for McKinsey Company. So I decided when I was a little kid that I liked math, and so I thought I would be a scientist. And then I figured out I didn't want to be a scientist. I wanted to be an engineer, and then I figured out that I didn't really want to be an engineer, but I loved the engineering concepts, and so I've been using those in the business realm for the past 2 decades.
So, the youth always talk about why do I have to take this subject in school and do all of this? You went through some pretty hard hurdles there to figure out what you want to do in life, but it sounds like all of that has only benefited you and the way that you carry on your business.
I'm a lifelong learner. Even when I was a professional, decided that I wanted to do something that was not my job, and so I became a holistic nutritionist on the side. And I learned about Chinese medicine, and I bring those concepts into my work as a business consultant. I've always been a fan of kind of literary arts fueling a strong foundation for knowledge that goes beyond kind of the business realm and the engineering realm.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, who's been a hero and inspiration for you in your life?
Oh, that's a question. I think there's a he doesn't know he would be an inspiration for me, but there's a guy named Chris Gillibo. He has a podcast had a book called The Art of Nonconformity. He launched um, a conference called the World Domination Summit, and his was my first entry into this world of, oh, I can make money by with thinking and to be not trapped in an office for 40 hours or 60 hours a week. And he was my first gateway into the world of small business and creative entrepreneurship. And his connections are sort of some of the ways that it became possible for me. So we've met briefly. He doesn't know he's a as a hero of mine, but he set the pace for what it's possible to do in an alternative career for me.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet that you haven't met and you find fascinating, who would that be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Who would I love to meet and talk to? I'd really, and I'm not an Elon Musk fan, but I'd love to have the chance to have a conversation and just see how his brain works and how he communicates when he's not destroying Twitter and distracting people from Tesla. But I would love to have a conversation with him, just understand how his brain works and how he sees the world. in a non-social media gated format.
You know, that's usually the number one answer, and I keep thinking in my head, somehow if they could get a camera on him to follow him around and just everybody just soak up how he does it. They couldn't do it though because there's too many secrets, there's too many things. The Colonel's recipe would be out and everybody would be making fried chicken. But if there's somehow they could harness that, and he would make so much money off of that.
Maybe enough to pay down against some of his the debt he's taken on to buy Twitter, right?
Right, exactly. Man, that was it. I don't even know what that was. It wasn't good. Um, so at the end of the day, what is it? So you give out a whole lot of good advice to people and help steer them. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I've ever gotten was to stop unabashedly hiding my ambition, but not burn out with my ambition. So when I have a lot of back accolades from working in my corporate roles and McKinsey and Company consulting, and I've started to feel a little ashamed of owning some of that background in some of the places I came from. Like when you worked in corporate, you weren't really supposed to like talk about the things you did because otherwise people think you're bragging and things like that. And even the entrepreneurship space, sometimes it's hard to kind of own ambition, particularly in the female entrepreneurship space where there's actually a lot of the 4-hour work week and you know hustle culture is out. And I want people I got the advice to stop hiding what I wanted to do and stop hiding my gifts and stop hiding, the people that are for me are going to be for me. The people that, are not for me are not going to be for me. And I got the advice to, stop hiding, start being vocal with what I wanted to do and my belief structures and how I wanted to run my business and that the right people would find me. And that's what's been the case.
So at the end of the day, what is your motivation to get up every day to do the work to help others, but you also have to evolve as a human being? What is that for you?
I get up every day wanting to democratize access to small business education, particularly for businesses that are expertise based businesses that by their nature don't scale. So there's SCORE is available for, business knowledge, and there's Y Combinator for like the tech spaces and Goldman Sachs, 10K small businesses if you have employees. But there's very little that says, what if you want to grow a business that's just enough?
Yeah.
A quote unquote lifestyle business, but how do we make access to that education where you didn't need to spend 6 figures on business school, that you didn't need to pay so much money for a lot of education that's filled with a lot of fluff? So how can we distill it down to what's really important and help more small businesses make money without having to go into debt to learn how to do it?
What's one of your favorite success stories?
One of my favorite success stories is one of my clients. She's a um, small business consultant, and she had been thinking, oh, I need to she works with schools and education, helping to improve literacy systems. And she'd been on the roadmap of, well, I need to keep growing. I need to keep growing. I need to keep growing. And she started taking on all these clients, and she was overwhelmed. And then she said, what am I doing this for? So she worked with her husband, she worked with her kids to say, what money do I need to take home? How many clients do I need to take? What prices do I need to charge? And she was able to, how do I run my sales process? She was able to say, I don't need to keep growing. I need to make this much money with this client portfolio that allows me the balance between working and spending time with my family and taking care of her health because she's got a chronic illness. And she got off the train of relentless growth and built a business that was right for her. And she's making the money she needs. She's saving for retirement. She's building wealth and she's doing it on her terms. And I couldn't be prouder of her.
So at the end of the day, of all of these things that you've done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I'm the proudest of that I left. One of another mentor of mine, his name is Paul. He has a book called The Pathless Path, and it's about stepping off the default paths that we were trained in, and that we, especially those of us who are high achievers, were trained into. Go to the big school, get the corporate job, rise up the ladder, sacrifice your health and your life to kind of like the corporate status tax. And I decided not to do. I realized I was going down that path, and I stopped, and I made a change, and I leapt out to do something that was much more fulfilling with me for me. Maybe not be as financially lucrative in the long game, although I think I have a chance to make that happen. But I stopped. I listened, and in the narrative of grow, 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 keep rising. You're only one step away from the next rung on the ladder. Um, it's really hard to step back and say, I'm going to take a different path and I'm going to do it something different. And I'm actually so proud of myself that I had the courageousness to do it and keep doing it and to be scrappy for the first couple of years while I'm building it up. And I'm thankful every day for the privilege that allowed me to do that. But I'm also really proud of myself for actually, when I left my job, everyone's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And they were like, I can't believe you're leaving. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, as a fan of the literary arts, and it's obviously, been a big part of your life. What's been one of the most important books or most memorable books that's been a part of your lineage?
Um, One of the most important books is a book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's about indigenous wisdom and how can we learn from the teachings of plants. And that book and the concepts of taking appropriate, respecting nature, respecting natural cycles, and learning what we can about like really how time moves and how nature moves and how we care for the ecosystem. Like those principles don't necessarily apply to life and business, except they totally apply to life and business. And that was one of those books that had been staring at me for like a couple of years before I finally sat down and read it. And I'm like, okay, like it's here now.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, you ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained so far, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self that do not drink alcohol, particularly to excess.
It's a cardinal
And
sin
the
for the
other one
youth.
is nothing good happens after 2 in the morning. I learned that in my mid 20s in Chicago. But I think when I had a lot of social anxiety during college in my early 20s and drowned a lot of that out with alcohol, I think I would have seen the signs of overwork and numbing out from that corporate path I was on earlier and would have prevented some damage to my body and potentially, I don't know if I would have gotten out in earlier, but I think I would have stopped playing the game sooner and recognized I wasn't going to win. So how do I navigate the odds in my favor
Yeah.
even while I was staying to like make money?
Yeah. So, Jessica, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I like to think of myself as a seeker wayfinder. I'm on the hunt for knowledge. I'm on the hunt to share what I'm learning, help to try to make the path easier for those around me who their brain doesn't maybe work like mine does, which is just like a hoover of knowledge at all times. So how can I use that to benefit others with benefit others with the knowledge that I'm learning and the skills that I'm gaining?
So, let me ask you this. If you could get into a time machine when we get off this call here, and you can go either back in time and see one event in human history or go somewhere in the future, where are you going to go? What's your choice, and what would you love to see?
I've always been a fan of colonial Williamsburg times.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back and see what it was like pre-revolution
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the colonial Williamsburg zone.
I always think about Oregon Trail when I was that. I mean, I'm going to give my age away, but I remember when I was in the eighth grade and I had a program that, and I was, yeah, that just brings all of those screenshots with the oxen and the covered wagons and whatnot.
I'm not sure I'd want to go back and die of dysentery, but
No, right. Yeah, stay away from that. So, Jessica, if anyone wants to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
they go to my website, jessicalackey.com/welcome. On that site is my weekly newsletter, which is a deep dive into expertise-based businesses and how to grow those sustainably, as well as a quiz that helps you assess your stage of business and what are the stage appropriate things to grow. Of course, my quiz is based on business as growing a tree,
Yeah,
which fits with the nature themes.
absolutely. Jessica, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Take